I was sitting quietly in the plush leather chair of a highly recommended cardiology clinic in downtown Chicago, expecting nothing more than a routine, slightly boring medical checkup, when a single object on the doctor's polished mahogany desk caused the blood to freeze instantly in my veins. It was a silver picture frame, angled slightly toward the doctor's empty seat. I leaned forward, squinting through the soft light of the office, hoping my eyes were playing a cruel trick on me. But they were not. The woman in the photograph was laughing with pure joy, her blonde hair falling over her bare shoulders, wearing a brilliant, fiery red silk dress with a highly distinct asymmetrical neckline. My heart did not simply beat faster. It felt as though it had been encased in solid ice. You see, a man does not easily forget a dress like that. You especially do not forget it when you personally paid a master tailor in Milan $15,000 to custom fit it to your wife's exact measurements just 3 short months ago. I remembered zipping her into that very dress in our luxury hotel suite, kissing her neck, and telling her she was the most beautiful woman in Italy. Yet here she was, captured in silver, sitting proudly on the desk of a cardiologist I had never met. Before the shock could morph into a physical reaction, the heavy door swung open and Dr. Miles Preston walked in. He wore a tailored suit under his pristine white lab coat, exuding the kind of arrogant confidence that only comes from a life of unchecked privilege. He extended a manicured hand, flashing a brilliant, expensive smile. In the business world, when you discover a competitor's fatal flaw, you do not gasp or flip the table. You smile, you step back, and you let them keep talking. I shook his hand, keeping my voice smooth and perfectly measured. I casually gestured toward the silver frame on his desk and remarked on the beautiful woman in the photograph, asking if she was his fiancée. Dr. Miles chuckled, a soft, affectionate sound that sent a fresh wave of cold fury through my body. He walked behind his desk, looking down at the photo with a look of absolute adoration. He told me her name was Cindy, the absolute love of his life. Cindy. My wife's name was Cynthia, and she had not even bothered to stray far from her real name when finding a lover. I leaned back comfortably in my chair, playing the role of a harmless, friendly older gentleman making polite small talk, and asked when the big day was. Miles sighed, adjusting his stethoscope around his neck as a shadow of frustration crossed his face. He explained that it was a bit complicated because Cindy was currently trapped in a nightmare of a marriage to a tyrannical, ancient billionaire who would drag her through court and leave her with nothing if she tried to divorce him. But then he leaned in, lowering his voice in a conspiratorial tone, and told me that the husband's heart was failing and he did not have much time left. He smiled and said they were just waiting it out, waiting for nature to take its course so she could finally be free. The silence in the room stretched for an eternity. He had absolutely no idea who I was. My wife had booked this appointment under my initials, V. Harrison, a standard security protocol I use to avoid unnecessary press or preferential bias. To Dr. Miles Preston, I was just an anonymous older patient with a minor cardiac complaint. He had no clue that the ancient billionaire he was waiting to die was sitting less than 3 feet away, staring right into his eyes. I kept my tone completely devoid of the violence building in my chest and remarked that patience was indeed a virtue, hoping things worked out exactly as they were meant to. He smiled, oblivious to the predator sitting across from him, and slid an amber prescription bottle across the polished wood toward me. He told me it was a highly effective new medication to regulate my mild arrhythmias, instructing me to take 1 pill every morning to stabilize my heart rate. I picked up the bottle, feeling its weight. This was not just medicine. This was the murder weapon. Cynthia had not just found me a specialist. She had found an accomplice highly motivated to make my heart stop beating. I slipped the bottle into my jacket, promised to follow his instructions to the letter, and walked out of the office with a steady, quiet pace. The civilized, loving husband I had been for 20 years died in that elevator. In his place stood the man who had ruthlessly conquered the Chicago real estate market, and I was about to show them both what happens when you start a war with a titan. The ride back to my penthouse overlooking the lake gave me exactly 30 minutes to cage the raging fury burning inside my chest. I had spent my entire life evaluating risks and neutralizing threats, but I never expected my own home to be a viper's nest. When the elevator doors opened into our foyer, the scent of expensive lilies and Cynthia's signature perfume greeted me. She was standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, arranging a bouquet, looking like the very picture of a devoted, elegant wife. I walked toward her, leaning slightly on my wooden cane to maintain the illusion of the fragile old man she and her doctor so desperately wanted me to be. She cooed my name, walking over to kiss my cheek, her lips feeling like ice against my skin as she asked how the appointment went. I offered a tired, appreciative smile, telling her the doctor was excellent and had prescribed a new medication that should fix my episodes. I placed the amber bottle on the marble kitchen island, and I caught the microscopic flicker of triumph in her eyes. It was a look of pure, unadulterated greed. I decided to test the waters. I asked her if she remembered the custom red silk dress I bought her in Milan, suggesting she wear it for dinner tonight to celebrate my good health. Cynthia did not miss a single beat. Her breathing remained steady as she smoothly lied, telling me she had donated it to a charity auction last month because it was a bit too flashy for her taste. It was a masterful lie, delivered with the perfect amount of altruistic charm to make me feel guilty for even asking. If I had not seen that exact dress in a silver frame on her lover's desk an hour ago, I would have believed her. I took the glass of water she offered, marveling at the monster I had married, and opened the bottle to swallow the first pill. I knew I had to take it right in front of her to keep her suspicion from igniting, but as soon as I retreated to my private study and locked the door, the physical toll of that single white capsule hit me like a freight train. Within 20 minutes, a sharp, suffocating pressure blossomed behind my sternum, and the room began to spin. A cold sweat broke out across my forehead, and my left arm went entirely numb. The doctor had given me a chemical cocktail designed to push an already stressed cardiovascular system straight off a cliff. My breathing became shallow, each inhale feeling like drawing broken glass into my lungs. I collapsed onto the floor, clutching my chest as panic clawed at my throat. But I refused to let them win this easily. I dragged myself toward the lower drawer of my desk, fumbling with the biometric lock to reach a hidden compartment containing a potent emergency vasodilator my previous actual doctor had given me. With trembling fingers, I managed to snap the vial open and place the emergency pill under my tongue. For 10 agonizing minutes, I lay on the Persian rug, fighting a silent battle for my life until the crushing weight began to lift. When my vision cleared, I splashed freezing water on my face in the adjoining bathroom, staring at my reflection. I looked old and frail, exactly like a man on the verge of a massive heart attack. If I had died, there would be no poison detected on a standard toxicology screen. It would just look like natural heart failure. I dried my face, my physical pain replaced by a cold, calculating resolve. I walked back to my desk, dumped the remaining white pills, and carefully replaced them with identical vitamin supplements from an old bottle. I would take one vitamin every single morning in front of Cynthia, letting her count the decreasing pills, letting her believe my death was inching closer with every passing day. I needed her to feel perfectly safe in her imminent victory, because while she was waiting for my heart to stop, I was going to systematically dismantle her entire world. I kept up the performance over the next few days, practicing a slight, deliberate tremor in my hands and allowing my shoulders to sag whenever Cynthia was in the room. The psychological torture of sharing my sanctuary with a woman who wanted me in a coffin was immense, but I needed to keep her completely comfortable. Every morning, she would hand me a vitamin capsule with a predatory intensity in her eyes, and I would swallow it, watching her smile widen. But the true depth of the darkness in my home did not fully reveal itself until the fourth night. I was lying in bed, training myself to sleep lightly, when the heavy bedroom door creaked open around 2 in the morning. I kept my eyes closed, regulating my breathing into the deep, slow rhythm of a sedated man. I heard the soft rustle of her silk nightgown as she moved toward my nightstand and picked up the amber bottle. Peeking through my eyelashes, I saw her face illuminated by the city lights. There was no love, no pity, and not even guilt on her face. It was a mask of cold, calculating impatience. She poured the pills in her palm, using her slender fingers to count them. 1, 2, 3, 4. She was performing a silent inventory of my impending death, verifying that the count was decreasing at the correct rate. She poured them back, tightened the lid, and then leaned down, her face hovering just inches above mine. I felt the faint warmth of her breath as she whispered for me to just let go and stop fighting it, saying Miles promised her it would be fast. She stood up and quietly slipped out, leaving me in the heavy silence of the dark. My mind burned with a terrifying, absolute clarity. Any lingering shred of hope that I had misunderstood the situation was officially dead. She was a predator waiting for her prey to bleed out, and I was sharing oxygen with my executioner. The next morning, I told her I was too exhausted to make it to the office, allowing my voice to sound thin and rasped. She kissed my forehead with fake concern and promised to cancel her luncheon, but I insisted she go. The moment she left, I threw off the covers, locked my study door, and dialed my assistant to clear my schedule, ensuring rumors of my declining health would reach the office. I then took the real toxic pills from my hidden desk compartment, slipped out through the service elevator, and drove an hour and a half south to an independent toxicology laboratory in Indiana, using an alias to avoid any media attention. The head toxicologist, a serious man with tired eyes, called me into his office after 3 hours of testing. He looked at me with a grave expression and asked where I had obtained the capsules. He explained that whoever formulated them possessed a highly sophisticated, dangerous understanding of cardiovascular pharmacology. The pills contained a highly concentrated, synthetic compound designed to act as a silent, invisible internal accelerant. It would slowly bind to the vascular walls, causing a progressive, deadly spike in blood pressure that would force a struggling heart to work exponentially harder. Within 2 to 3 weeks, it would induce a massive, fatal heart attack. And the most chilling part was that the compound was synthesized to completely metabolize and break down within hours of the cardiac event, leaving absolutely no detectable trace in a standard autopsy. It was the perfect, untraceable murder weapon. I sat rigidly, absorbing the scientific confirmation of my planned execution. The timeline was clear. If I had taken those pills, I would be dead before the end of the current month. I thanked the scientist, took the report, and walked back to my car, realizing they had fundamentally miscalculated their timeline. They thought I was a fragile, clueless victim, but they had actually just handed me the weapon to destroy them. To bring down a network of parasites, one must not strike too early. Instead, you must feed their insatiable hunger until they become blind. I returned to the penthouse and contacted my bulldog attorney, Mitchell Crawford, a ruthless legal mind who had defended my empire for 20 years. I told him to cancel his appointments and come directly to my study with a portable printer. When he arrived, taking my manufactured weakness, I instructed him to draft a brand new will. I made sure my voice was loud enough to be captured by the hidden microphones my security team had installed in the study. I told Mitchell that my heart was failing and I wanted to destroy my old estate plan. I commanded him to draft the document, leaving exactly 50% of my entire $80 million estate, corporate voting rights, and real estate portfolio to my wife, Cynthia, and the other 50% to my son, Derek. Mitchell stared at me in disbelief, warning me of Derek's reckless financial history, but I slammed my fist on the desk in a burst of manufactured anger, shouting that they were my only family and I wanted them to have absolute control. He printed the document, and I told him to leave it on my desk so I could review the language before signing it in front of a notary the next morning. Within 30 minutes of Mitchell leaving, my security cameras showed Cynthia slipping into the study, her eyes locking onto the draft. I watched as her face blossomed into a smile of absolute triumph, and she quickly snapped high-resolution photographs of every page with her smartphone to send to her accomplices. But my trap was far more intricate than she could ever comprehend. I went to my private bathroom, locked the door, and pulled up my encrypted security tablet to monitor her live audio feed. She was pacing inside her massive custom closet, making a call to Gregory Harrison, a notoriously ruthless private attorney who specialized in hostile asset recovery. I listened in absolute shock as she told Gregory about the new 50-50 split. But then she laughed and coldly stated that she refused to share a single dime with a pathetic degenerate like Derek. She revealed to her lawyer that she had hired a private forensic accountant months ago and had complete, undeniable proof that Derek had embezzled nearly $4 million from my logistics empire through 12 fake shell companies to pay off his underground cryptocurrency debts. She planned to let me die from the poison, execute the new will, and then immediately trigger a massive federal audit to hand the embezzlement file to the authorities. Derek would be sent to federal prison for 20 years, forced to forfeit his inheritance back to the primary estate, and she would absorb his entire share legally. And as for her lover, Dr. Miles Preston, she revealed she had kept his original handwritten prescription pads, his encrypted text messages detailing the chemical compound, and even a secret audio recording of him admitting the medication would induce a fatal heart attack. She was going to play the grieving, suspicious widow, hand the evidence to the district attorney, and sue him for gross medical malpractice while pushing for manslaughter charges to silence him forever. I stood in the dark bathroom, holding my breath as the call ended. I was not just dealing with greedy opportunists. I was sharing a home with a brilliant, truly merciless monster who was ready to destroy everyone in her path. But her cold ambition was about to guide her straight into a steel cage. The final stage of my counterattack required absolute precision. I met with the district attorney and the head of the Federal Financial Crimes Division in a secure, windowless room downtown, laying out the toxicology report, the embezzlement files, and the secret audio recordings. Within 2 hours, we had constructed an airtight legal strategy, but I insisted on one non-negotiable condition. The arrests had to happen on my terms, on my timeline, and in my penthouse. I returned home, playing the dying patriarch, and announced that I wanted to host a grand formal dinner party to celebrate our 20th wedding anniversary and my official retirement. I summoned my son Derek, promising him I would sign over the corporate assets of the dinner, which brought a look of desperate, sickening relief to his face. I then called Dr. Miles Preston, inviting him as our honored guest to publicly toast the brilliant medical mind managing my heart. Cynthia was visibly terrified, but she could not object without exposing herself. On the night of the dinner, a violent storm battered the penthouse windows. Cynthia emerged in a stunning emerald gown, looking like a radiant hostess, completely unaware of the trap. When Derek and Dr. Preston arrived, the tension in the dining room was a suffocating physical weight. After the main course was served, I stood up at the head of the table, leaving my wooden cane behind. The frail old man they had been waiting to bury vanished instantly. I picked up my crystal glass, tapped it with a spoon, and looked down at the three of them with cold, merciless eyes. I pulled out the first manila folder and dropped it with a loud slap onto Dr. Preston's plate. I leaned down and whispered that he was a brilliant cardiologist, but a terrible hitman, revealing that the Indiana laboratory had fully identified his synthetic poison. As he began to shake and stammer, I played the recording of Cynthia's phone call from the surround sound speakers, letting him hear her call him a spineless idiot and detail her plan to frame him for manslaughter. Miles slumped forward, sobbing as his life crumbled. I then turned to Derek, slamming the second folder onto his plate, exposing his 12 shell companies and $4 million in embezzlement. I told him he was nothing but a foolish pawn in a much darker game, playing the recording of Cynthia planning to send him to federal prison to take his share of the inheritance. The room erupted into absolute, chaotic fury as they violently turned on each other like starving wolves. Suddenly, the heavy dining room doors crashed open, and a dozen armed federal agents poured into the room. Dr. Preston lunged across the table at Cynthia, spilling the red wine like a pool of blood before being tackled to the floor. Derek collapsed onto his knees, patting my leg and begging for my help, but I calmly pushed him away, telling him he had forged his own chains. Cynthia stood frozen as the lead agent read her rights, her beautiful mask completely shattered. I sat comfortably at the head of the table, took a slow, deliberate sip of my vintage Bordeaux, and watched the federal agents drag the three broken monsters out of my home, clearing my life of their toxic presence forever. In the end, they tried to steal my legacy, but they forgot one simple rule. A Titan does not merely survive, he reigns.